live. Welcome to Restoration Conversations. I'm Linda Falcone, and on behalf of Advancing Women Artists and the Florentine, I'm very happy to be here today with Cristina Acidini, who is the president of the Accademia, delle Arti del Disegno, which is the world's oldest drawing academy here in Florence. We're so excited to have this opportunity to be here in person and to discover really this institution that is at the heart of the Renaissance. Just to introduce you, Cristina, for a moment. Cristina is the president of two of the foremost cultural institutions here in Florence, the Casa Buonarroti Museum, which is linked to the legacy of Michelangelo, and obviously the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno, which we're going to take you through tonight and discover different elements of this very evocative location right in the center of Florence. Cristina, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Linda, for coming here, and welcome to all who visit with us this old Accademia for the artists.
Yes. Why don't we start? Why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about the history of this institution, its origins, so that the guests can understand where we are?
Well, of course, I'll do with the greatest pleasure, although it's a long story and I have to keep it reasonably short. The story started in 1563 when the great artist and writer Giorgio Vasari persuade, so to say, the Duke Cosimo de Medici, the first Grand Duke then, to found the Academy of Drawing. That was the old name of it. Together with Don Vincenzo Borghini, who was a very learned priest that was assisting Vasari in this challenge, so to say. What was the challenge? Was to upgrade the status of the artists in Florence and to bring them to account, to be visible and respected as the literati, as the men of law or letters who were considered and regarded that as. So the aim was completely successful. And the old company of San Luca, Compagnia di San Luca, that was a reunion, a guild of artists, transformed into this new academy, which was the first academy for artists in the Western world, let's say.
Yes.
And from then on, the Accademia had many changes and transformation, but never lost of sight its mission, so to say, and expanded it, enriched it, empowered it, and never stopped working for the arts and for the artists.
So it's been open, its doors have been open for 450 years?
Exactly.
More than 450?
More than that, yes. Okay. And with virtually no interruption. And so that is something we're very proud of.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks, and I'm very also, it's a great emotion to be the first woman in the leadership of this institution, which was devoted mostly to male artists at the very beginning, at least.
Cristina, who were some of the primary artists at its founding that were members of the Accademia?
Well, the best artists in Florence, Giorgio Vasari for the first, but among the founders you can find Benvenuto Cellini, for example, and the other artists of that moment. Unfortunately, Bronzino was not in time for that. And especially, Bronzino was aged, but Pontormo was dead. It was one of the most important artists of that period, and Vasari was also an admirer of Pontormo, although in his life he criticizes some frescoes of his in San Lorenzo. But that said, Pontormo was the first one who was buried in the chapel that was given to the Accademia. At the very beginning, this was not the premises where the academic body used to keep its meetings, and they used to go in a chapel in the cloisters of Santissima Annunziata. And the first one to be buried was Pontormo, as I said.
Just to see if I'm understanding correctly, when you talk about Vasari looking to increase the status of artists, this is a very Renaissance concept. Because before the Renaissance, artists were believed to be craftsmen and not necessarily, you know, big thinkers or creative individuals. And so was that what he was trying to do on some level?
Absolutely, yes. And in this stream of philosophy, so to say, it's very important to acknowledge what Leon Battista Alberti gave to this philosophy. He was the first one in about 1436 to suggest that the artists should read and should learn the myths and the histories of ancient world in order to be, more exercised in complicated and sophisticated subjects for their paintings. So that suggestion was extremely important, especially here in Florence. And Vasari, who was a letterato himself, was aware that the only way to improve the situation of the artists is to give them a status that was recognized throughout the society, was to have an academy, as the men of the humanistics used to have.
Exactly. Christina, I'm looking at something here. I'm looking at a detached fresco.
Exactly. We were just speaking about Pontormo.
Francesco can show our guests. We were just mentioning Pontormo.
Yes.
And we have this fresco by Pontormo. So if you want to tell us a little bit about what we're seeing.
Yes.
Why this is special, obviously.
What we see is what has been left somehow throughout the century on the walls of a small chapel, one of the many chapels or tabernacles, a small shrine on the public roads. And this was outside Florence, but not far from the very center of the city. And Tabernacolo di Boldrone, it's its name, because Boldrone is the name of the place. It was nearby a convent. And what we see is a crucifixion with Christ on the cross, Madonna, and St. John. And on the two walls that used to be part of the architecture, we see St. Julian elegantly dressed as a young knight, and St. Augustine with the symbols of his bishopry. Yeah. And what is left is not so much as we would like to, but it's fantastic to see those figures and especially the heads.
Stay here.
And it is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece that is on permanent loan here in the Accademia. All the works of art that you see all around or belong to the Accademia or have been given as a long-term loan.
Okay.
So
now I have a question about the long-term loan.
Yes, please.
Because with Advancing Women Artists, you know that we often talk about the deposits and art in the deposits and searching in the storerooms, etc. But there's also a whole other realm of artwork that is in other locations and other institutions that perhaps isn't on museum walls, but in this case, it's at the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno. Can you tell us a little bit about art mobility in that sense? The Accademia is acting as a deposit? Is that correct?
Well, yes, in a way. Okay. As I was telling before, this is not the original seat of the Accademia. The Accademia came here after many moves around in Florence, only in the 70s of the last century, after the flood of 1966. And the place was an empty shell, absolutely insignificant in a way. It's a nice medieval palace, but nothing was there except a Madonna that used to protect the place. And it was entirely furnished with paintings, sculpture, and pieces of furniture coming from the storerooms of the Superintendenza.
Okay.
And the one who made the selection was a real promising young employee, was Antonio Paolucci.
Okay.
One of the greatest art historians throughout his career.
Yes.
And he gave these rooms a look that is somehow very intriguing and charming. It seems that it has been this way forever.
Yes.
But that's not true.
Yes.
It was an invention in a way. Plus, we have the donations of the academicians, works of art that have been donated.
Which we're going to see some later.
Absolutely. But we have.
I just want to say one thing about the Pontormo.
Yes.
Because I know that Vasari loved Pontormo, but he also had some criticisms of Pontormo.
Yes.
And thinking about this particular fresco, he commented at one point about Pontormo persisting in the German whim, right? So does that mean melancholy, or it's quite modern? This
yes, but that's exactly what Vasari was not totally enthusiastic of.
Okay.
Because this German mood, this German styles is a criticism, as you said, especially in the frescoes in the Certosa del Galluzzo, because it's a way to make strong figures, bitter cuts, and can I say, to be not pleasant at all in a way. Stark with strong contrasts. Now we don't perceive the real colors, but Pontormo used to make brilliant contrasts of colors. It's a palette, very intriguing and bizarre
dramatic,
in a
very
way.
dramatic too. Yeah.
So that Vasari was a man of order, a courtesan in a way. But Vasari was also, if I may, the one who decided the logo, the symbol of the Accademia. There was a great discussion. Benvenuto Cellini was arguing against this choice, but it was a very intelligent choice. This symbol is an ancient one, transformed from 3 circles that used to be the mark that Michelangelo used to carve on his blocks of marble, transformed into 3 crowns.
Wow.
And the 3 crowns also bring the memory of the 3 great poets of Tuscany, Dante Alighieri, Francesco Petrarca, Giovanni Boccaccio. So once again,
he was creating this connection.
Exactly.
Okay.
And eventually there was also another symbol. This wonderful interpretation is by Pietro Annigoni, but there was a symbolism in which the architects have the oak, painters have the olive tree, and sculptors have the laurel for glory. So you see that there's a sort of knot of symbols that is still with us. I mean, it's still working.
Because I wanted to turn in this direction, but just to follow what you're saying. Because the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno are the arts, plural, right? Many.
They are exactly the 3 main arts at that time were painting, architecture, and sculpture.
Okay.
And so they are intertwined and like sisters, all daughters to the great father Disegno. And Disegno is difficult to translate because luckily enough, you have 2 words, drawing and design.
Yes.
And for us, it's all together. So it means the project, which is in one's mind, and the sign, which is on the paper or wherever.
Yeah. It's fascinating. The connection he was trying to make. Cristina, here we have a lot of different fellows.
Yes.
And I'm wondering who they are, just very briefly. Are these members? Who are these?
They are the
gentlemen.
Well, generally speaking, the presidents until almost the last one. But the first ones used to be called the lieutenants because they were keeping the place for the real president, the Duke Cosimo, the real head of the Accademia.
Yes.
And so their portraits have been reunited, and they go on.
Is your portrait going to be here one day?
One day. I will not enjoy it. I will not be here anymore. That's the way they do. They don't put it until one is live.
Of course.
Live. But sooner or later.
Sooner or later. Okay. I wanted to ask, you know, from Advancing Women Artists' perspective, definitely we're very interested in the female presence in the Accademia. And I know that comparatively, compared to other academies in Europe, be it the Royal Academy or the Academy in France, etc., the Accademia dell'Arte del Disegno was quite liberal in the sense that it had several female members. So what can you tell us? We have allegorical women here, but what can you tell us about the women in the Accademia?
Well, as you said, the Accademia was founded by men, and in the name of a great man, Michelangelo Buonarroti, who was the ideal father of all the arts.
Yes.
That said, yes, the Accademia of Florence was one of the first ones to admit women, and the first woman was a great woman, was Artemisia Gentileschi,
yes,
who became an academician in 1616. And she was here not only because her husband was a Florentine, but also because she was invited in painting in the Casa Buonarroti, in the ceiling of the gallery devoted to the glory of the great Michelangelo, once again. And she was invited to paint a female allegory. Mm-hmm. In this occasion, she also was associated to Accademia and was the first one.
Yes.
Other women came throughout the 16th century, but especially from the 18th century on, they were more and more frequent. It has to be considered that many of those women were sister to, or daughters to, or wife to a man.
Yes.
And that helped.
But that was the case for women artists until probably the 1950s.
Absolutely.
There was definitely always some sort of relationship with a male artist on some level, father, brother, lover, husband. That's really the world
with some
over.
bright exception. For example, Angelica Kaufmann, the Swiss paintress, she came here and was associated at 21 year old, when she was 21 years old.
Yes.
And her fame was already expanding throughout Europe, and she was recognized immediately.
Yes. On Angelica Kaufmann, I just want to remind the audience, because this is an important point when we're looking at comparative work. Angelica Kaufmann was also a founding member of the Royal Academy, along with Mary Moser.
Yeah.
But after the 1700s, after that founding moment, there was not another female member of the Royal Academy until 1936, when Dame Laura Knight was finally admitted as a member. So if you compare that with what you see at the Accademia, and not just artists, there were also noble women, many noble women who were, let's say, amateur artists or amateur engravers, for example. And I think I read that Catherine of Russia, the Tsarist,
she was associated, of course,
a member of the Academy.
An homage to the sovereign, but yes, she was.
Yeah.
And then scientists, women like in our times, of course, Rita Levi-Montalcini.
Yes, the Nobel Prize winner in medicine.
In medicine, yes. And well, in last century, everything was more accelerated in a way. That many more women coming from many more professions have been associated.
There are a lot of female art historians now being accepted to the Accademia, no?
Large majority of the art historians are women.
Yes, yes. One comment about Artemisia, because I think it helps to understand what kind of a function the Accademia also had for artists in general. But I read an anecdote that said she always had problems with her creditors and with woodworkers and with color mixers, etc., for not paying them. So at one point, a workshop owner came to the Accademia, and basically the Accademia functioned as almost a court of law, because this workshop owner filed a lawsuit against Artemisia. She was sentenced by the Accademia dell'Arte del Disegno. Yes. But then Artemisia went to the Grand Duke, Cosimo. She had the sentence erased, but she was then later sentenced for another problem with the debt. So it's interesting that the Accademia was almost like a legal body. They subtracted her from her debts in that time. Can you tell us something about the different functions?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the Accademia of the origins had multiple functions. And the case you mentioned explains very well that it was the right place where to solve quarrels and controversies.
Yes.
In the artistic field. But they have many other tasks.
Yeah.
And for a long period, for example, starting in the year 1602, the professors of the Accademia were also those who judged which works of art were supposed to stay in the Grand Duchy forever. So a sort of export office,
yes,
like now in the Superintendenza.
Yes.
And so they started to make a list of the artists whose works should not go away from
Who's
Tuscany.
An example of works of an artist whose works couldn't leave?
Well, Michelangelo, Raffaello, Tiziano, Pontormo.
Yes.
Curiously enough, not Vasari.
Not Vasari.
No, Vasari was free to circulate outside.
Yeah. He talked too much, right?
Perhaps.
Christina, I wanted to ask if you could take us into the other room.
Absolutely. This is a real
I know that there's something
surprise.
Special.
It is a surprise because it is a place that is not yet open. We were almost ready to open it to the public in a way or the other when the pandemic emergency stopped us, as many other institutions, unfortunately. But I'm very happy to guide you here for the first camera, which is allowed here. This used to be a room for ordinary sessions of the Accademia, and it has been transformed into a sort of, the museum, our museum, devoted to a very special guest, Michelangelo's River God. This piece is one of his kind. There's nothing else that may be regarded as a similar creation by Michelangelo, because this is something that he created with his own hands, using the most varied material, gypsum, mud, cotton, everything assembled together in order to create a form, a human form, that could be the model for marble sculpture. Those marble sculptures, 4 river gods, were supposed to enrich the new sacristy, the Medici Chapel in San Lorenzo, with the tombs of the dukes Giuliano and Lorenzo. And the sacristy is something that we regarded as a perfect place. It's not so. Michelangelo went away from Florence forever in 1534. It left it unfinished with the statues on the ground, and the project was interrupted. Those sculptures were never made, and this strange and embarrassing leftover was there for years until the Duke Cosimo presented it to Bartolomeo Ammannati, one of his most reliable architects in sculpture. And Ammannati treasured it for years, and eventually he gave it as his gift, personal gift, to the Accademia, especially for the young sculptors to be, in order to instruct them, to show the powerful forms of Michelangelo. It's extremely fascinating because it has an enormous energy, although it's not finished. And it is exactly what Michelangelo was interested in, the strong movement of the powerful male figure. You understand that this is an old river god, but still full of energy as a young man. And he used to scratch it with this, probably with his hands also. And this piece went around with the Accademia in the various places throughout the centuries, and eventually it was sort of lost. It was lost among the other models of the Accademia delle Belle Arti, the new institution that was devoted and is devoted to the instruction of the young artists to be, and recognized in the first decades of the last century only. Then it was moved to Casa Buonarroti, stayed there, was restored, and from its color that was a dark brown, it was discovered that it is whitish in order to suggest the marble, and eventually brought here where we built this room around him with a friend and an enemy at the same time. The two works of art that we have around here and belong to the Accademia are works that refer to masters of the time of Michelangelo. And the two of them had a role in his life in a way. Francesco Granacci, the author of the Lunette with the Adoration of the Child, was a young man who literally discovered Michelangelo's huge talent and was able to persuade Michelangelo's father, Ludovico Buonarroti, to let him enter the workshop of Ghirlandaio and become an artist. That was something that Ludovico was against.
Yes.
He didn't like the idea of having an artist in his family, but thanks to Granacci.
He was disappointed.
Was disappointed. No. And the San Gallo, one of the San Gallo, Antonio Francesco, is the author of this wonderful Christ in wood, painted wood. And we know that San Gallo, Giuliano, Antonio, and Francesco were not exactly friends to Michelangelo. He used to call them the setta sangallesca, the Sangallesca sect, because they were compact, a family, and he felt that he was against them all as in the usual rivalry among artists.
Yes.
So the three of them are here together again. Wow. It's a room that, make you feel goose pimples.
Yes, exactly. It's cold in here, but the chills are for another reason.
Yes, it's a great emotion.
Yeah.
And thanks to our academicians, this was possible, because Giorgio Bonsanti conceived this project and brought it forward, and the architect, academician David Paltri and Roberto Medardi conceived the project and followed all the phases of the work.
Yes.
So thanks to their volunteer skill and presence, we have this.
Yes. And it was restored by the Friends of Florence, no?
It was restored by the Friends of Florence in Casa Buonarroti,
okay.
Yes. And it was then on show in Palazzo Strozzi.
Okay.
So
I do want to thank you for this particular view, and I'm sure that I speak on behalf of the guests as well who are tuning in from all over the world today. We're so honored to see these three friends. We're so honored to be among friends with these wonderful this wonderful dialogue.
As far as friends are concerned, I don't miss the opportunity to thank all those who contributed to this project.
Yes.
In terms of fundraising that was started relatively few months ago, I would say more than 1 year. And I found so many volunteers, so many donors
Yes.
that were enthusiastic about the project and gave us the opportunity to bring it to the conclusion.
Yes.
I'm very thankful, really.
It's wonderful. I have one question about the statue, about the river god.
Please.
Is it true that this was a model that would then be used to create the bronze, in the sense that did sculptors like Michelangelo create models or sketches, life-size or actual-size sketches, that then they would use to go to commissioners to get approval for the actual work before sculpting it?
It may happen, yes, that they had various steps in their work. The first one was the first idea. It could be a small, tiny sketch. It's incredible, speaking of Michelangelo, that the first ideas for his last judgment are on leaflets. They can't believe that he was conceiving such a huge fresco in a small space. That said, there were also models that could be shown to the patrons in order to have their approval, to get their approval. And this one especially was conceived to be a model for the, let's say, minor sculptors, the assistants to Michelangelo, and they were supposed to carve it in marble, white marble.
Wow. It's amazing. It's very much has a lot of energy, as you said before, and I mean, he's certainly responding to what Vasari mentioned, the idea of going back to classic models and that inspiration.
Yeah, especially the iconography of the river god is an ancient one. It comes from Roman sculpture and still visible in Rome. If you think of the two river gods that Michelangelo himself put in the Campidoglio, in the square up of the hill. Yes. So yes, it was and I think it is also something we have to think about. Why pagan gods in a Christian chapel? Mm-hmm. And I think they were supposed to be the symbol of the territories, of the areas that the young dukes and captains were the lords of. So it might be Tiber, mm-hmm. Arno, yes. Maybe other rivers of their lives.
Do you think this is an Arno statue?
I like to think it.
Yeah.
I like to believe that it is the Arno, but I have no evidences, I have to admit.
It's certainly dramatic. I'm thinking of, I don't know if it was Vasari who said the divine Michelangelo,
oh, yes.
Divino Michelangelo.
Yes, he was.
And you almost feel like you're in a sacred space, no? That this is almost a little temple.
Yes, yes, exactly. This is the spirit. Why the architects put this long seat. They want people to stay there and to enjoy
Should
the
we
calm.
sit?
Why don't?
I'm going to
sit
just for a minute, and then we'll go upstairs.
Sure.
It's lovely.
So you have time to see the three pieces together and to compare them if you want to, and to enjoy the three different arts, because, you know, it's a sort of sample, or you have painting, you have sculpture in various materials, you have sculpture in wood with painting on it. So
yes.
It's a mixture of arts.
A dialogue, definitely. Shall we go upstairs? I know that there's some things you want to show us up there,
sure.
But I just want to warn our guests that obviously this palace was just fitted with complete Wi-Fi for this event as of yesterday, right? The medieval palace has been hooked up, but we're not 100% certain that the connection will last as we go up the stairs. So we're going to try. It's possible that there'll be a jump in the connection. Don't be frightened by it. We'll be right back. And Francisco, who's behind the camera, is going to hook us up if by any chance we lose connection with you. But we're going to go upstairs, yes, and while we go, I'll talk a little bit about maybe where we are located.
Yes, so we are in such a special place.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So Cristina, this palace is actually dedicated to the Butchers Guild.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
right?
And we are still in good terms with them.
There still is a Butchers Guild.
Yes, it's not the old one, but it's a contemporary equivalent of it. And so every now and then they ask to use this room for their meetings, and they feel like in the medieval glory of the guild.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. We are actually, in terms of street, we're on via
San Michele.
Or San Michele, exactly. And we're right across or San Michele, which used to be an ancient granary, and then it became a church for the guilds in Florence. And Francesco is allowing you to look out the window. This really interesting. We're right in the heart of the city, and you can see even they're Gothic, no? They're Gothic?
Yes, the Gothic windows.
Gothic windows.
We are right in front of the St. George by Donatello.
Exactly. Can you catch that, Francesco? Can you catch the St. George?
It's slow.
We're asking you to do the impossible here, but we know that so many of our guests wish they were here with us, and so we're going to try and show them.
I hope that as soon as possible we will open our doors.
Yes.
All around you have works of art that we mentioned already, given by the artists.
Francesco, if you wouldn't mind just looking at some of the different art pieces of art. So Cristina, the artists that are members of the Academy continue to donate works of art to the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno.
Yes. They are very generous, and we of course welcome their donations and try to keep them on view.
Yes.
The more we can.
There are quite a few sculptors, no?
Yes. Well, now the Accademia is divided into 5 classes that are painting, sculpture, and architecture, plus history of art, and humanities and sciences. So, of course, the art historians donate their books.
Yes.
And so do the others. This is the library.
We're in the library now.
Yes, you don't see the books because they are in these shelves.
Yes. We'll wait for Francesco to arrive.
Sure.
Did the connection stay with us the entire time? Yes? Perfect. Okay.
Oh, good.
That's great news.
It's working. So you have here this space is for internal uses usually. And we have works of art here too.
We're putting on our masks for this segment.
As we're moving around.
As we're moving around. So, can you still hear us in terms of microphone? Are we okay with sound? Perfect. Okay. So, in terms of special artworks, this is a different time, no?
Yes.
A different century.
We jump from one century to another, of course. And this is a most remarkable painting by Giovanni, so-called Giannino Marchidge, who is well known among art historians as a great conservator and restorer of works of art. But he was a fantastic painter. And so this is amazing. You know, this is one of the masterpieces, of course, that we have here in the Accademia. And it's representing the playwright dead, and all the characters of his maybe comedies or maybe tragedies or anyhow his works sorrowful around him. And this is an idea that is very shocking. Everybody who comes here usually stares at the painting with an amazed look. And you see all the masks like Pulcinella or
right here, no?
yes, and the young lover in 18th century wig and jacket, and young girls and doctors, and all those characters are losing their own lives.
Yes.
Because nobody will write their deeds and facts anymore. So there's a typical style among the World War I and World War II. We are in the 20s. And this was given as the winner of a prize, because the Accademia uses to have, and it's not easy now, to the good habit to encourage the artists with the prize Tito Conti, with the prize Gaetano Bianchi, and we hope to revive them, but it's not easy at all.
Yes.
We have many traditions and resources that are now difficult to keep alive.
Yes.
But we go on.
Go on. Exactly, for 450 plus.
Plus,
right?
Exactly. And our academician organized and divided into different degrees of association. We have the ordinari, the one who are the core of the structure, and the emeriti. Emeriti are the senior ones,
Emeritus,
so to say.
yeah.
And then the correspondents, which usually do not live in Florence nor in Italy, and the accademici d'onore.
The honorary.
Which are a sort of expanded galaxy where many personalities and characters may take place. And so it is very, like I say, gratifying to see how everybody is proud to be in a one place or the other, but to belong to the Accademia and to work for it. And we have also works of art coming from various fields. I don't know if you want to have a look around. We have the solemn gallery of the artists.
So these are the actual artists themselves. I see Andrea del Sarto.
Andrea del Sarto and Pontormo again, and then Carlo Dolci, Mannati,
Exactly.
Raffaello. All those are copies of Remo's portraits. For example, Raphael is in his mature age,
yes.
and the original is in the Louvre. It's the double portrait of Raphael, and so only him was extracted. And this is the loan of the galleries. The series is on loan.
And these are books in this?
Yes, this is a library, although we are trying to organize a more contemporary library, let's say, but many books are there.
Christina, I'm seeing something over here, which I'd like you to talk to us about.
Absolutely,
these two figures.
Yes.
And if you want to tell the audience what we're seeing here.
Yes, this is one of the most recent donation by the Chinese artist Wu Weishan. We have many friends among the Chinese artists, and we are in strict relationships with academies that are very respected in China, and very often they are powerful institutions. So they are good friends, and many of those artists organize exhibitions here. And Wu Weishan donated this. These two figures are his idea of the universal knowledge, represented by Leonardo da Vinci, which was the model for whom was the Raphael fresco, the School of Athens, and Confucius, the Chinese wise man who is, of course, one of the pillars of their culture. So he sees them together. One is in the Neoplatonic way, pointing up, and Confucius looking staring ahead in a way. There is not a real dialogue, but a closeness and a potential friendship.
The East and the West.
The East and the West, exactly, and especially China and Italy.
Right.
So we're glad of this symbol. It's a very good idea to put those two mythical, almost mythical personages.
Yes, almost mythical, you're right. You're right. I really loved the painting that we were looking at before, because you seldom see, we often talk about an artist responding to work, an artist responding to art, the public responding to art, but you never actually see the art responding to the maker. So this is a totally different viewpoint.
That's a nice interpretation. You're right.
Very different.
You're right.
Christina, I'm wondering, I know that we have people from all over the world who are tuning in today.
Yes.
And I'm sure that over the course of our time together, they've been writing questions.
Oh, great.
And so if you wouldn't mind, I thought we'd sit down together.
I would just let me point at one last work that is there. Maybe Francesco can make a view of it. It is the 4 horses of the chariot of Ben Hur. This is a famous movie, and the leading image of this movie is the race of the chariots.
Yes.
It is a drawing and a painting by Silvano Nano Campeggi,
Yes.
who has been in the service, so to say, of Hollywood for many years after World War II, and Gone with the Wind and many other movies has his
signature.
And so he donated, just a few years before he passed away, he donated the original sketch of the horses, which are the symbol of the movie itself.
So he, in a way, he's also combining arts, right? The cinema and painting.
Exactly.
He's in the right place.
He felt in the right place, and I'm very happy that I was the president when he became academician. Are we far enough to remove our masks? What do you think?
I think so.
Yes,
I think
we are.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Free again.
Yes. Let's see. So there's a question. One of our guests is wondering if there are drawings in the archive.
Yes, there are drawings. Oh, we downstairs we saw only one, the one by Annigoni with the 3 crowns, but we have many other drawings and etchings and graphic materials. Yes, and we have archives behind the scenes.
Yes. And you have some archives that are at the state archives as well.
Well, the documents of the ancient Academy are there as a special fund of the Accademia. They have been organized and investigated in many ways. Yes, they are open to the public.
Interesting, because I think the audience might be interested. The drawing, right? In Renaissance time, and in what really counted was the cartoon. What really counted was the drawing. I mean, you think about Michelangelo, and he would do a drawing, and then all the artists would paint off of his drawings. So it's a different mentality than what we think of today, or what we thought for many years, thinking that the painting was the thing. But in reality, what made the artist and what made the genius was the drawing. Well,
Leonardo used to say that the painting is a mental drawing first. You have to draw in your mind and then with your hand. But it's exactly in this period, in the Renaissance, when the drawings start to be an object of appreciation and collection also. In the case of Michelangelo, we know that his friends used to take drawings from him and to share them as works of art completely done, not intermediary or preparatory drawings only.
Right.
And so that is this is something that is specifically linked to the Florentine culture. The cult of drawing started here. For example, in Venice, they have wonderful painters, but we don't have many drawings left, and we know they didn't especially use to draw. In Florence, it was something that was in the first years of an artist as the training, which was most necessary and popular.
Well, it was also Vasari who talked about the technique of transferring a cartoon using the spolvero technique.
Exactly. He knows how, he was very expert. yes.
Yeah. But that was because he knew how important drawing was, no?
Absolutely, yes. Well, but as I was mentioning, the small drawings can be as useful as the huge cartoons, because every step in the drawing has its own function and sense.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah, I know that, I mean, in terms of women artists, paper was one of the cheaper forms, one of the cheaper art forms, although for training, for artist training, and for training of noble women too.
Yes, they were allowed to draw and to later on in time to make watercolors, especially watercolors or pastels, wax pastels, like Giovanna Fratellini, for example. But they had many restrictions.
Yeah. Okay, so does the Academy own many master drawings? So
no, not so far back. No, the old ones, the famous drawings of the Medici collections are in the Gabinetto Disegni e Stampe degli Uffizi.
Okay. One of our guests is asking, is it open now for viewing?
Unfortunately, it is not. Usually, it is not open on a regular basis. But we organize, conferences, symposia, public meetings, comments upon books, and so and so. So there are many occasions to visit the Accademia, especially the rooms of the ground floor.
Yes.
But we had to stop. In such a room that is not small at all, we can allow no more than 20 people to enter.
Okay.
With the present restrictions. So we decided to wait better times.
Yeah, well, today I don't know how many we have. However, I think we're more than 20, however, of those who are tuning in.
Virtually, yes.
I can't visualize it here, but I'm sure that we have people from all over the world who have truly enjoyed this opportunity. Another question, are there any archival documents held by the Academy that throw light on early training methods and techniques?
What do you think? It refers to the first years of the Academy, the 16th century? Throughout.
Yeah.
Because we don't
early
have
training methods. So.
The early ones we don't know so much. We know that they had sessions here. And for example, there are two drawings by Federico Zuccari in the Louvre that show something very interesting. The young trainee in the sacristy, the new sacristy of Michelangelo in San Lorenzo. So they are there with heavy cloaks on them because it's probably cold.
Yeah.
And they are moving around and drawing the pieces. So that was a way to learn to copy and to interpret through the drawing. On the other hand, we don't know so much about the early training. It was not anymore the workshop that used to be the glory of Florence in the previous centuries. It was a sort of individual training. And eventually, in the Great Revolution, the Great Reformation was in 1784, when the Grand Duke Pietro Leopoldo Habsburg-Lothringen decided to divide the functions. And so the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno was going on with his promoting and creating art. On the other hand, the real school, the Fine Art Academy, was founded that year and is still existing and is an independent structure.
Right. That's actually the next question. Does the Academy, let's see, what is the relationship between the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno and the Academy?
Perfect question.
Yeah.
If you say Accademia in Florence, usually people don't know what to think.
Yeah.
Because there are three main streams that may bring the name Accademia.
Yeah.
Accademia delle Arti del Disegno, the old one, the oldest of the three. Accademia di Belle Arti, Fine Arts Academy, born in 1784, and the Galleria dell'Accademia, Academy Gallery, which is very, very famous because of the David. But that gallery was created and in the service of the Fine Art Academy. The young students were supposed to go there and to learn from the old masters. The David was not still there. It would arrive in 1873.
Because it was in Piazza della Signoria.
It was in Piazza della Signoria, the original one. But in that place, in the Galleria dell'Accademia, Pietro Leopoldo, the Grand Duke, assembled a great part of the artistic legacy that was taken away from the monastery, from the monasteries and convents. When he suppressed the so-called religious corporations, so the various orders of monks, of nuns, and so, he concentrated on the works of art there in order to, make them available for the young students to copy, to interpret them.
And that's linked to early training.
Exactly.
Right? Because copying of art
yes.
the main source of training. Really.
But now, the confusion is great because we are three independent structures, and our academia is independent. Liturgy is an autonomous institution, and the Fine Arts Academy is from the Ministry of Education, and the Gallery of the Accademia is the Ministry of Culture. So we are neighbors, in good terms, but
not family
divided.
members, neighbors.
Neighbors, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I think, let's do one more question. Does the Academy, the Accademia, hold drawing life classes for academicians? So I think they're talking about this Accademia, Accademia del Disegno.
Well, in our mission, we do not have lessons, to say, or courses, regular courses, but we have this possibility. And what we have been doing in the last years for 3 times was to organize master classes for professors or young artists coming from abroad.
Okay.
And we had guests from China and from other. In this case, there were 2 kinds of programs, both visiting museums and experiencing arts in the open air or in the ateliers of the various artists.
Very interesting.
So all the Accademia contributed to this moment. It was very, very exciting and very well received. Unfortunately, once again, the pandemic emergency stopped us, but we'll start again.
We have to keep the conversation going, right?
Exactly.
The international conversation.
Yes. But and on the other hand, we were stimulated and inspired to develop the technical issues and to have more virtual meetings and more virtual conferences, much more than before the pandemic emergency. And that helps a lot. I think that we will never abandon this kind of new media, not so new, but for us.
Well, on our part, we're very excited that the structure now has complete Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Thanks to Restoration Conversations.
Yes, it has been a great
and the work that your staff did over the past couple of days to make that possible. So it's, thanks to them as well. I know they've been working to make it happen.
Thank you. It will help a lot.
Yeah, I hope. Cristina, it's been wonderful. It's been an honor to see this space, to spend time with you. I do want to say to all the AWA aficionados that Cristina Acidini has been fundamental. She was the superintendent of the cultural heritage in Tuscany in the museum circuit of Florence, Polo Museale, or former Polo Museale. And for many years, and particularly at the beginning of AWA, she was absolutely fundamental in supporting us in the work in restoring art by women. So Cristina, she's one of our Nelly awardees as well. So really, for me, it's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you in a different environment, but still, to the benefit of culture. And so I really want to thank our guests as well. On behalf of AWA and the Florentine, I know that Jane Farrell has been sending questions and taking care of the technological aspect on the other side. But thank you so much for being with us today for Restoration Conversations.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.